Should women be on the front lines of war just like men? Well, that's what some Democrats are pushing for. Senate Democrats added language to the annual defense authorization bill that would require women to register for the draft. Conservatives, led by Senator Roger Wicker, are expected to attempt to remove the provision. Senator Josh Hawley, who led efforts to strip similar language requiring women sign up for the draft in 2021 and 2022, called the provision insane, woke, and told Fox News Democrats shouldn't be experimenting with the military. But Senate Armed Services Committee Chair Jack Reed, a Democrat, defended the policy, saying, quote, "Women are doing a remarkable job in our forces today, and if we were in a situation requiring a draft, I think we would need all able-bodied citizens 18 and above. It's not like World War II where we need a lot of infantry. We need cyber experts, we need intelligence analysts, linguists, etc. Wait a second, there are a lot of women out there that can do this better than men."
Either way, women shouldn't worry too much since the military hasn't activated a draft in over 50 years. Plus, these proposals have a slim chance of actually becoming law. And it's questionable if Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer will even bring the bill to the floor, given the dwindling numbers of days on the legislative calendar before the election. Moreover, women have been in combat before. War has changed from days of conventional front lines. During the Iraq invasion, women served as military police and often encountered battles. So is this just a talking point? I think maybe it is. Maybe it's like, oh, you want to automatically register everyone for the draft? Will you register women? But I think the conversation should have been, okay, we're going to automatically register people for the draft, but not to vote. Maybe we should automatically register people to vote as well. Instead, it's become this sort of culture war gender debate.
Yeah, it's interesting. You kind of see two reactions from people on the right, at least that I've seen, one of which is, well, all of you feminists called for equality, now you get to reap the fruits of it. Mm-hmm. And then others saying, no, this is ridiculous. We should be sticking to traditional gender roles. If men are going off to fight in wars, women need to stay home and take care of families. And I guess I fall somewhere in the middle on that, but I think it's all a distraction from the fact that there shouldn't be a draft.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Right? I agree. If no one's willing to fight for the country they live in, should that country be fought for at all? So be it. If no one's willing to fight for the United States of America, maybe we should develop it into a country worth fighting for. I think there's enough people very willing to serve the country, and it should be something that happens off of incentives. I don't like that so many working class kids are like, well, I could either stay in this hometown working a minimum wage job for the rest of my life, or I could get a college degree, but I give my entire life to the US government through the military service. That's not a great decision. I don't think that should be a decision anyone ever makes, but I also don't really think we should have a draft. I mean, we should maybe end it before we have the technology to clone people and the empire can take over. It's a little Star Wars for you, but I don't think we're going to get to that point. I think what's going to happen is this doesn't end up being on the floor.
Yeah, I think at least when people are choosing to join the military for economic reasons or to get away from their hometown to have some kind of future career, I mean, at least there's ostensibly a choice there. Mm-hmm. But with the draft, I mean, the reality is the elites are still not going to be subjected to it because there are all kinds of ways that people can wriggle out of it, and all of the exceptions to being drafted outside of things related to like being a mother are people who are going through higher education or are serving some other purpose here in the country. And so the people who consistently vote to continue the draft or add more classes of people into the draft are exactly the people who are never going to have to worry about them or their kids being drafted. So it's, I think, just like another tool of the elites to force the working class to fight their wars for them.
It's like Congress giving themselves lifelong benefits after 3 terms and then cutting Social Security because we have too much of a deficit in America. It's like, really, guys? You're more important than the Americans that you represent? And that's what the draft communicates as well. If you can afford the kind of lawyers or doctors that will sign a medical note for you to say, you can't serve, you're obviously never going to serve. We've seen so many elites get into public office and then they're in controversy because we find out that either they or their family skirted the draft. And I think to say, okay, we need to send women off to the draft as well, this comes on the heels of recruitment numbers being incredibly low and the military getting so desperate that they're hiring ridiculous people on TikTok to make these very strange, like thirst-trappy videos. Yeah. There's a Twitch streamer who wears kind of like revealing and tight clothing that has been reported to be on the payroll of the recruitment offices. And so they're getting kind of desperate. And I really think you need to make the country worth fighting for. You need to make it something that's honorable and attractive, not just something that you force the working class of the country to do.
We used to have people who would lie about their age for the sake of joining the military because they wanted so badly to serve their country. And now we are in this recruiting crisis where they're trying to both draft women and then they're allowing non-citizens of the United States to serve in the military because they're so desperate for bodies. And some of these recruitment methods, I think, totally miss the point. As you said, like there's some weird thirst trap stuff going on. There's members of the Navy doing like drag queen routines, and then at the end, they're revealed to be like an official representative of the U.S. Navy. And it's like, okay, you can do that on your personal time, but I don't know how many like drag queens are clamoring to serve in the Navy. I don't think that's going to really help you make up the deficit in recruiting that you're trying to make up for. Maybe we should be focusing on building back patriotism and teaching people that it is okay to be proud to be an American. And also, I mean, of course, making the country worth fighting for as well.
Yeah, we see the result of foreign policy under the Biden administration, but it's not just a Biden thing. We've seen the foreign policy of people who come from this class of elites that benefits from multinational corporations being protected abroad. And the U.S. military has been used so many times to fight the wars of the wealthiest people in our country. I think everyday working class people don't really care that United Fruit Company doesn't have a ton of land in Guatemala that they can cheaply produce and extract bananas from. That's not the type of situation where everyday working people are like, yeah, you know what? United Fruit Company should be able to profit off of the exploitation of working people and land in Guatemala. No, we want health care. We want a decent living. We want a good education for our kids. That's where we want to see public dollars going, not these covert operations that end up leading to huge military conflicts and wars that working people are sent off to go and die. Why? Because a few rich guys that used to represent these corporations at Sullivan and Cromwell are now the head of the CIA and Secretary of State, the Dulles brothers. It's just, I think people are at a point where they've seen the resources of our country used to benefit the elites, and that includes the military. And when you make, the calculation, is this something that's worth dying for? I think a lot of people are saying no, because what war would I go off to fight?
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of veterans who tell me that they're very disillusioned with the state of foreign policy in America. A lot of them, of course, were really disturbed by the way that the withdrawal in Afghanistan was conducted, which, of course, led to the tragic death of Marines and the suicide bombing at the Kabul airport. And they're like, we were there for decades, and the hasty withdrawal meant that the Taliban took over anyway. So what did we all sacrifice? Our time at home, our families, and some of us, our lives, to go over there for? What was the whole point of that? And I think you can make a comparison between World War I and World War II, where it felt like we were actually fighting for something important, something that was vital to American interest and really the interest of humanity. And now it's these wars over oil and wars over the leader that somebody elected in some country we don't like, and so we want to install a different leader because they're more useful to whoever is in power. And it's nothing that is directly of interest to people in this country who are just normal citizens who care about the safety of themselves and their fellow Americans. It's all of these bizarre, confusing, complicated political calculations.
And at this point, people recognize a pattern of behavior, whether it's the Iran-Contra scandal, the post-9/11 wars, or they've read the many declassified CIA documents, and they see what the U.S. is doing, posturing in defense of Israel and in defense of Ukraine, really ramping up the rhetoric that we're undeniably on the side of people in wars that we either cannot win or wars that the world sees as imperial wars. And they're jeopardizing the working class people by ramping up that rhetoric. And I think people see it happening, and it's just another reason they don't want to sign up for the military, and they definitely don't want to draft.
Well, I'm just glad that we did not get drawn in by this distraction of a debate over women joining the draft, because it's obviously way deeper than that.
No, we're better than that.
We try to be.
More rising after this.